Hi there, this is Catherine with Enfolded Heart Music. We're going to begin today the walkthrough tutorial for the Lyre piece Touch of Compassion. We're going to do this in the same way that I did Dance to the Sun, where I'm breaking it up into 3 different videos. That's to keep myself fresh, you fresh, and just to make sure that we can take our time with it. These are a little bit longer songs and compared to the Whispers of Beauty album. And so, again, this is the first of 3 parts. And if you're not familiar with how I do these walkthrough tutorials, it's exactly as it sounds. I'm going to walk through the entire piece. I'll go note by note saying where to find the note on your lyre, how to play that, and talking through rhythms and sectioning off the pieces to give you a recommendation and a good idea of maybe how to think about the piece as a whole, certainly, but also the structure of it to help you practice it and then kind of conceptualize it a little bit so you know sort of the landscape of the piece, how it really, how the music moves throughout, which parts are repeated and things like that. Again, if you haven't seen one of these videos before, first of all, welcome. And also know that I'm going to be using the sheet music to communicate to you where I'm at and what sections I'm going to be focusing on. So if you'd like the sheet music, if that's something helpful for you, even if you can't read sheet music, it may be read sheet music very well. You probably would need to know at least a little bit, some of the basics of it. But it's a nice way for us to have something in common, a common item so that we can communicate again where we're at, so that you don't get lost and so that we can be literally on the same page. So check out the link below. I have digital copies available, individual songs, so you could purchase just this piece. You could also purchase the entire Butterfly Dream album. You could also get like I have here and have it nicely bound and printed off and sent to you in that way, whatever format works best for you. There's several different options for you. Know that I include 2 copies for each song. I have a clean copy that's just your typical notation, and then the second copy has let's see if I can show you, indicates the octave number, and this is harder than I thought. It indicates what note it is and the octave number. So this is for somebody, again, who maybe is not very familiar with how to read sheet music, or maybe you're not really confident in your capacity. So for example, this says A3, B3, C4, etc. And you have the right hand on top, the left hand on the bottom. So each piece of sheet music for all my lyre pieces include a double copy that way. And again, that's just to aid those who would find it very helpful. So check out the link below, again, if that's something that's helpful for you. Get my metronome back up here. And let me know if you have any questions with that. Okay, so let's just jump in. Come back whenever you have yourself set up. I would have your lyre with you most likely, if you're really wanting to learn this piece. And come back. I'm gonna have there's a few brief comments I want to make about the piece, and then I'll talk through the different sections, and you can mark up your sheet music and things like that. So come back when you're ready for us to begin. Okay, welcome back. Again, hopefully you've got yourself set up, whatever that means for you, of how you want to walk through this tutorial. You've got maybe your lyre, if you've got sheet music, you've got that in a place where you can easily see it and follow along. One little note about this piece in general is that in comparison with several of the other pieces on this album, the Butterfly Dream album, Touch of Compassion is on the easier end of things, technically speaking. Just like a lot of other very melodic or slower pieces, they don't require as much technical coordination, perhaps. Like Dance of the Sun was much more technically challenging than Touch of Compassion, for example. But certainly that doesn't mean that there's not a lot to it. So in regards to literally your touch, the way in which your fingers touch on here, they need to be strong but gentle and things like that. But if you liked Whispers of Beauty, if you've maybe tried some of those songs, for example, this has a similar style to it. The left hand stays in a very similar place, has a very much repeated rhythmic patterns, things like that. So if maybe you're not quite as advanced in being able to play some things on the lyre, but you could do something like Whispers of Beauty, Memories of Home, things, those types of songs. This is going to be in that same ballpark. It's a little bit longer, but otherwise, technically speaking, it's about the same. So just as a general comment, if you're trying to assess if this is a good fit for your playing capacities. So, okay, so with that, let's go ahead and jump into the sections of the piece. So, as I've mentioned many times before, I usually have a pencil, right on my stand, and I've already gone through and marked these so I can communicate them to you. But what I'd like to do is to just tell you the measure numbers in case you'd like to mark your music as well, of how I personally would divide it up, and I have, and therefore I'm going to use these divisions to walk through the tutorial with you. This piece doesn't have as much repetition in the strict sense as some of the other pieces do, but several of the sorry, I just had another thought. I'll come back to that. But several of the sections have repetition in certain parts of them. So they're similar to other ones, even if they're not exactly the same. So I've considered those distinct, but just know that even though these specific ones, I won't say, section B repeats itself 3 times because it doesn't, but it's very similar to section A. So half of it repeats itself, but half of it doesn't. So as a whole, it doesn't. But anyway, so that's just to say it's not as repetitive in certain respects, but it does, once you've got certain parts down, it's going to come back in other ways later in the piece. Okay, that was a little bit complicated, but here we go. So section A is from measure 1 to 15. The measure numbers on this album are the same, whatever copy you're using. If you're using the one with the note names or without the note names, it's going to be the same, which was great. I figured out how to do that. Okay, so 1 to 15, and also 51 to 66. That's it. So it repeats twice. It's actually the only one that... No, I'm sorry. There's another one that repeats. Anyway, section A, 1 to 15 and 51 to 66. Then we've got section B, and that is measures 16 through 30. Now, this is an example of what I was trying to explain a moment ago, where section B, as we'll see today, the second half of it is the same as section A, but the first part is different enough that it seemed necessary to deem it its own section. So just as a side note, it's very close to A, but we'll give it its own space. Okay, then we have section C, which is measures 31 through 50 and 98 through 117. Again, that's 31 through 50 and 98 through 117. That's the main chunk of the piece. That's the vast majority of the piece. We also have sections D and E, which I would consider the bridge. This, again, as I mentioned in the Dance of the Sun tutorial, the bridge is something in one way or another completely different from the rest of the piece. For this one, it moves into, it plays in different keys, you could say. So it features different notes. And the rhythmic pattern is also different than the rest of the piece in general. So section D starts in measure 67 and goes until 74. And section E goes from 75 to 97. So the bridge at large is 67 through 97. And then we'll have our final section, section F. Excuse me. This is simply the end of the piece from measure 118 through 130. And this plays off of section B. It's different than any other part, but it plays off of section B. Okay, so that's it. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it here. What we're going to do in this video, I should have said this earlier, what we're going to do in this video are sections A, B, and C. This is going to be the longest video, most likely, because we're just covering the most space, but I think it'll work well. We'll have A, B, and C for this video, then part 2 will be D and E, and then the last video will be F and putting it all together. Okay. So once you've got that marked, and another suggestion if you want at this point is once you have your sheet music marked, you can listen to the original recording of this song, which I'll include a link below, and follow along, and you'll be able to hear, oh, that's a different section. It should be pretty obvious once it's pointed out to you that there's a shift in one way or another. You'll also hear that, for example, A and B are very similar, and that F is very similar to both A and B, but particularly B. You'll also hear something like the end of the bridge in section E has a lot of similarities to section C. Okay. The last thing to note is that if you are watching this and you have a 16-string lyre, the way that I've done this on the sheet music is when the original piece goes higher than what you have for your 16 string, which will only be these top two notes, I've given you alternative suggestions for that, and I will talk that through. I will point out that these are the right strings, for example, for the 16 string, but I won't play it that way. I think that'll be a little bit too lengthy and might be a little bit confusing. So if you have a 16 string, I would definitely get the sheet music so that you can know what those notes are. Again, I will say what the notes are, but it will probably be a little bit confusing unless you have that right in front of you. So just a suggestion there. Okay. And then last thing before we move into the section A itself is to note what key we're in. Now I've noted this in a couple of videos as I've finished up the album Butterfly Dream, and that is that all of these pieces are going to have the same tuning. And this is so that if you're practicing or playing for others or for yourself, and you want to play more than one song, you don't have to worry about changing any of the pegs between the two. This was something that was kind of fun for me in regards to the creativity challenge of it, because I didn't want all the songs to sound the same and be really focused or using the same patterns, but to write 8 songs with the same tuning and technically in the same 2 keys was a nice little challenge, and it was delightful to see that it could be done, and I was happy with the results. So anyways, what is that key? That key is C major or A minor. So this one is going to feature A minor. And if you've got the sheet music on the first page of the second copy, so that in the book, no matter what you have, it should be page 26. You'll see at the top left-hand corner of that page, you'll see that it says 19-string lyre tuning in A minor. Start with G3 if you're using a 16 string. So 19, this will be F. 16 string, you won't have this F, you'll start with this G. Excuse me. Okay. And you'll see where you should be tuned at. So A minor and C major, for those of you who are familiar at all with the piano, it means there are no sharps or no flats, so all white keys. Okay. So very quickly, to help you tune yours, I'll go through the notes that they should be tuned to. So this lowest one, again, a 19 string, it should be F3, G3, A3, B3, C4, D4, E4, F4, G4, A4, B4, C5, D5, E5, F5, G5, A5, and if you've got a 16 string, that A5 will be your top note. Okay, if you've got a 19 string, we've got 2 more, and that's B5 and C6. All right. So if you've got your tuner, I just use one that's on my phone. Whatever tuner you've got, that is the letter and numbers that should be popping up as you pull that string. Okay. I think that's it, actually, for this section. this is kind of to get us organized. What are the sections? How can I understand them? How can I hear them if you want to listen to that piece? How should my lyre be set up? And whatever else I covered. But just get yourself situated. And I will also be using, sorry, this is the last thing. I will be using a metronome. I'm not sure how well you can see this. I can't see my computer. I'm just using a normal metronome from my phone. It works quite well. I'm going to be setting it to 110, which is in between really slow and not quite as fast as I might play it in kind of its full swing. You want it at 110 if you want to follow along with the pace that I'm doing. Certainly feel free to go slower than that. And as you practice independently, I would encourage you to go slower than that. But for the purposes of this video, 110 is where I'm going to sit. And the time signature is 4/4. All you need to know is that if you have something that indicates what beats, how many beats, or if you have an image of, different lines, or sometimes they're dots, you want to have 4 of those. We need 4 beats. We have 4 beats in each measure, is what 4/4 indicates in part. So if you'd like to use that, I would very much encourage that. It will help you with that left hand in particular, which is going to be a kind of almost a drone in the background, but it needs to be quite steady because our right hand is going to be dependent on it to know when to come in. So again, I'd encourage you to have that metronome, get it to 110 with 4 beats per measure. All right. As always, if you have any trouble with any of this, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to walk through it more slowly or more particularly for you if you need some help understanding some of these more nitty-gritty aspects. So once you've got that set up, come back. We're going to do part A in the next section. Alrighty, we're back for section A. We're going to be taking a look at measures 1 through 15. This pattern also repeats itself at 51 through 66, which will be in a certain way where we end today. So we're going to begin and end with the same section. What I'm going to do though is I'm actually going to start with the left hand, because if you take a look at the sheet music, you can see that the left hand is very repetitive. This is similar to, as I mentioned before, many of the Whispers of Beauty songs, and as well as a few other on the Butterfly Dream album. But this is nice and handy. It makes it very simple for us to learn, and then it's just a matter of becoming more comfortable as we go. So I'd like to focus on this on the left hand first, also because you'll also notice if you look at the sheet music, the right hand has a lot of rests. This is one of the reasons why the piece is technically a little bit easier, and it also just gives a nice kind of relaxed feel, a sort of contemplative or meditative feel to the piece in general, because you have something kind of flowing and constant on the left hand, whereas the right hand you have something like if you were looking at a lake and you have the kind of the ripples and then you drop something in it and it catches your attention, but if you have too much, it's too distracting and you kind of ruin the whole peacefulness of the lake. So it's kind of an interesting image maybe to use to understand how to sort of drop that right hand in there in a way that is fitting and delicate, but also really rings out for the listener to hear. So with that right hand, we are dependent. My point with that ultimately was to say that the right hand is going to depend on the left hand. The left hand has the constancy and holds the piece throughout. There's essentially no time when both hands are completely not playing, and so you need that left hand to know when to put that right hand in there. So having that constant and really confident is kind of a must for this piece. Okay, so let's take a look now at what notes we're actually going to be on. So let's just take section A and let's basically cut it in half. I'd like to look just at the left hand from measures 1 through 8. Now, technically, this will be measures 2 through 8 because there's nothing in the left hand for measure 1. But we're going to start with measure 1 in the right hand in a little bit. But these notes in the left hand, what do we have here in measure 2? We have A, B, C, E, and C. Before getting into any of the rhythms, I would make sure that you're very comfortable with that pattern. Okay. A couple of things to note about this is your ring finger or your forefinger is probably going to be your weakest finger that you've got here. And that's going to be playing the E and then later the D. Okay. So I would pay sort of special attention and special focus to making sure that's a strong and very purposeful stroke on that string. You want it to be just as strong as your thumb, your pointer, and your middle finger, or your 1, 2, and 3 finger. So you don't want it to sound a lot quieter. For example, you may at first experience it sounding like, and that's not what we're looking for. We want it to all be nice and even. Oops. Okay. Another note is that you don't want to have your left hand trying to hold the lyre while you're doing this. This is a pattern that you're going to do throughout the entire piece. Essentially, you have small variations throughout, but that left hand is really holding the piece together. And so if you're trying to hold your lyre with your left hand as well, especially since it's towards the bottom of the lyre, it may be a little bit more tempting to do that. I would really encourage you to find a way to hold your lyre that does not require that. So for me, this body strap or shoulder strap, whatever you want to call it, is just phenomenal. It works great. And I've made a video before of even just using a t-shirt, which is what I started with before I received this lovely strap. I also have this piece of shelving liner, which I've mentioned before. That holds it steady on my leg in the sense of it doesn't slip off because of the clothing that I'm wearing, whatever that may be. But this strap allows me to totally be free to play the lyre. Now, I do sometimes use the lyre to support my left hand, and the best way I can explain this is you don't want to be using your hand to support the lyre. It's okay, in my opinion, to use the lyre to support your hand, but not the other way around, okay? So I find this lyre is a little bit thicker than what I had previously. It was, I don't know, it's maybe like 1.5 inches or something. I don't know, is that 1.5 inches? Anyways, is about this thick. And I find that very nice to have my hand to rest a little bit on there. It's a nice position because my hand is at a nice angle, whereas when it's not as thick, my hand ends up kind of crunching like this. And this is a terrible position to try and get some strength and coordination down. But so, you know, and it's hard to speak too much about this because lyres are so different in their structure. The Brandon John one of the things I love about it is that he works really hard to get the ergonomics of it to be really cooperative with you. And so there's a bend to the instrument that leaves this really nice and open. He leaves some ton of space back here to be open. This piece of wood back here is very smooth and comfortable. So if you do like to rest your hand on that, it's very, very comfortable. Things like that. Not all lyres are like that, so you just sort of have to work with what you've got, but try and really not to have your hand holding that lyre, whatever sort of strap that you need to have. There's a gnat in here. Whatever you need to do to free your hands to really play the lyre. I'd encourage that, especially for this song, because your left hand is not going to be able to hold it and play this at the same time. So if you got questions about that, or if I can help brainstorm different ideas for your particular lyre, I'd be happy to help, in whatever way I can with that. Feel free to reach out. Okay, so let's get back to the notes a little bit. So we have, again, A, B, C, E, and C. We will get into the rhythms in a minute, but I want to jump ahead and look at where we're going. So if you take a look at sheet music, if you've got that in front of you, measures 2, 3, 4, and 5. That left hand is exactly the same, okay? Absolutely the same. We're not going to get into the rhythms yet, of course, as I just said, but we will in a moment. But first, let's look at measure 6. We see that it looks very similar. 6, 7, and 8 all look very similar to 2, 3, 4, and 5. But they are one string down. So whereas we started on A before, we're going to start on G. So we'll have G, A, B, D, and B. And then up again to A, down to G, I would practice that until you're very, very comfortable with that. Again, you may need some time to really strengthen your fingers, and that just takes time, really, and practice to build the muscles and have the brain-hand connection, really strong, so that it's all very seamless, and what your mind is telling your body to do, it's capable of doing. But make sure you're comfortable with that. If you've got a 16-string lyre, this second progression that starts on G, that's going to be your lowest string. So you won't have this one right here. It'll be your lowest string. So it, again, may be particularly tempting to cramp your hand. It may be harder to reach than it is on the Brandon John version. But again, I just really encourage you to be creative about that and see the best position for your hand to be there. Okay. I'm not going to finish the rest of A on the left hand yet. I'd like to do the rhythm first. So let's get our metronome going. Again, I've got this at 110. And I'm just going to have you listen to it. I'm going to just do, you know what? I will go ahead and do measures 2 through 8 because they're so similar. I'll do it twice for you. And then I may talk through a little bit of the rhythm so you can make sure that you're doing it correctly. Okay? So yeah, let's just give it a go. 2 through 8. For the left hand, I'll do this twice. We're focusing on rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll stop there for now. So what you will notice is that, how do I explain this? There is the third beat. You're going to have to wait for that before the last note comes in. So there's going to be a tendency for that last note in each measure. It'll be a C or a B, a C or a B. There's a tendency for that to come in a little early. I'm going to slow this down, the metronome down, so that we can really focus on that. I'm going to slow it down to 90. It's going to feel really slow. Okay, but I want to count it out for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? Let me do, sorry, I was just going back and forth between those two. If you couldn't hear me, I was saying 1 and 2 and 3 and then you'll wait for 4 to come in. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? Again, if you don't know how to read sheet music, that's okay. Hopefully even just having these numbers, if nothing else, just for a feel for when that last note comes in, hopefully that will be helpful for you. If you're totally lost, if you're like, I don't even know what she's talking about, just take a deep breath, listen to it. Go lower. Back up. Down again. And try and copy exactly what you hear, okay? I'm gonna do it one more time. I'm gonna do it at 90 for measures 2 through 8, just the left hand, and hopefully if you've got your metronome, you got it on 90, you've already listened and played it. Doing it with the metronome will help it be much more exact than you may be doing it without the metronome. So let's give that a try. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we'll stop there. Okay, give that a go. Get real comfortable with that because, again, that's a position meaning which strings, and the pattern that is going to be throughout almost the entire piece. Okay? So we're going to stop with the left hand right now. Again, I want to divide this A section into two, so we'll come back on the left hand in a moment, but let's put this right hand in. We can see that the right hand doesn't come in very much. It only comes in measures 1 and 2, and then in 5 and 6. So we're going to do those at the same, I'm going to cover all those now, and then we'll put that with the left hand, and then we'll see what the rest of section A looks like. So let's find these notes. The first note is E4. Now this E4, is the same E4 that your forefinger or your ring finger is on, which means you got to take that off at the beginning. It's the same string. If you've got it on there, it won't ring, right? Okay. So we have E4, then we have A4, B4, C5, A4. Again, that's E, A, B, C, A. Then we have 2 measures of rest where we don't play anything. We come back in and measure 5, and those notes, those strings will be A, B, C, B, D. Okay. What I'm going to do now is actually do it. I am going to keep the metronome on 90. I think 110 maybe was a little bit fast for this this part of the tutorial. We'll speed it up in a little bit, but right now let's stay with 90. I'm going to put both hands together because this is a very good example of really starting with both hands together rather than separately quite as much. Certainly make sure you've got familiarity with what notes, right, that we're playing. Make sure you're familiar with what it is that you need to be playing. But in regards to rhythm, the right hand is so dependent on the left hand that it's going to make it unnecessarily difficult, I think, to put them to keep them separate for very long. Now, you might want to do this for your sake, and the way that you work, it might work much better for you. But I would pretty quickly put it in with the left hand because it will be the left hand is sort of counting the beats for you in a certain way and indicates when the right hand comes in. So I'm going to do this twice with both hands together, with the metronome on 90, and we'll come back to this this theme later in the song as well. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Stop there. Let's point out one thing before I do it a second time. The shift in the left hand from the A position to the G position happens in measure 6 at the same time that the right hand goes to a B. That B and then D, that is when the shift happens down to okay? So I'll point that out as we go. One, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Here we go. That's where that shift was. Okay, and we'll stop there. All right, for the sake of time in regards to this tutorial, I'm gonna go ahead and keep moving. At this point, it's just a matter of you gaining comfort with this, so take it as slow, as fast as you need. Be patient with yourself. When you get this, you'll see that this theme comes back more and more, and especially that left hand. If you got this part, you've almost got the left hand for the entire piece. So take your time, especially on this first part. But I'm going to go ahead and keep going, and feel free to pause and restart the video as is best for you and your pace. So let's take a look at that left hand starting in measure 8. We're going to go from 8 to 15 and finish off section A. As we look at this, broadly speaking, 9 to 15, we'll see that measures 13, 14, and 15 we already know. Okay, so they are the same thing as our introductory part with A. That was measures 13, 14, and 15. So you already know that. So we don't need to go that far. So we're going to focus on the measures prior to that. So 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we will come into measure 9 from measure 8 with ourselves already in the G position. Okay. So just looking at the notes, we have G, A, and B. We will then go to D. So same notes as we've had before, but the rhythm is going to be different, and we also won't return to that B at the end as we've been doing. So whereas before we've been going, we will simply stay on the D in measure 9. So once we've had those notes, we'll do the rhythms in a moment. We see that we bump back up to the A position in measure 10, where we have A, B, C, E, and C. Same notes as we've had, but it will be a different rhythm. And then in measure 11, we go back down to G, so we go G, A, G, right? In measures 9. 9 is in the G position, 10 is in the A position, 11 is in the G position again. So we have G, this is measure 11, then we have B, and then A. Measure 12, all we do is repeat that A, let it ring. Okay. Following that, we will be in that A position again. Okay. Okay, measures 9 through 12, left hand only. Start in the G position. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Once I counted, the second time, kind of a little quieter so you could just hear it. And again, take your time. Work with each measure at a time if you need to. I need to work in a little bit bigger chunks, otherwise this will be a very, very long video. And I'll be very tired by the end of it and won't be any help at all. So that is measures 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then again, 13, 14, 15, we go back to our original pattern. But let's take a look at the right hand for this second section of part A, and it will help us to, when we put them together, you'll realize that they click together in a way that's very helpful. Again, perhaps more so than having just that left hand or just the right hand by itself. This one I am going to do the right hand, the notes and the rhythms on its own because it's much more active. So let's just do the notes first. We have E5, then we have A, we return back to E, then we go to D, up to E, and back to D. Then we have D again. In measure 11 we have C, D, C. See a little bit of a pattern here. Then we have B, and in measure 12 we have A, B, C, B, G, A, and then rests and doesn't play for 2 measures. So, what does this rhythm sound like? One, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, once you've got that, let's put the hands together so you have the sounds. Oops, I'm shaking my music stand. Okay. Remember that left hand's going to be in the G position. We'll count off and then jump in. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, that wasn't right. I'm sorry, I wasn't right with the metronome. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now let's go ahead and bump that metronome up to 110 again. Okay, 110, and let's do all of section A. Again, I'm going a little faster than you will likely go on your own, but hopefully you now know the notes, can hear the rhythm, and then work at your own pace from there. So let's do all of section A once through on 110. So it's a bit faster than where we've been going, but it's much more similar to where you probably should be when you're ready to go through the whole section. Okay? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, so that is section A. Again, it will repeat itself later in the piece. Once you are comfortable with that, come back and we will do part B. All right, we are back for part B. Part B is going to go pretty swiftly because there is a ton of similarities to part A. When I wrote it, it came out as a small sort of derivative of part A. But it's got enough of a difference where I think it's helpful to keep it separate. But if you're feeling any sort of overwhelmment, maybe this will help. If you're not feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling excited and ready to move forward, then hopefully this will just add to your excitement, knowing that you're already quite far into part B without even looking at it. So part B, as a reminder, is from measures 16 through 30. And the first thing I'd like to point out is that the left hand is literally exactly the same, except for one very small difference in measure 29. I will go ahead and just, since we're on it, I'll articulate what that difference is, but then we're just going to go straight into the right hand and work on putting the hands together, because that left hand you already have. And so all you need is to put that same left hand that you used in part A with the melody, the right hand, in part B. So in regards to doing it by itself, that won't be something that you need to do because you've already done that legwork. So as a very small short note, measure 29. Previously, this was the same as 30. Right, that's our pattern. But 29, because the right hand does something also slightly different than what we did before, we won't go back down to the C. Okay, so let me illustrate this. This is what it was before. I've got this on 90, my metronome. So before it was and now in measure 29 it will be, okay, I'll do that one more time. Okay. Just so if you need to scrub that part, that's what that left hand is going to look like in 29. Again, it'll make a lot more sense when we have that right hand in there because they're playing on offbeats of each other. They kind of go back and forth between each other. So when we get there, that will make even more sense. But just to have it in isolation, that's what that left hand does in measure 29. But let's back way up. Let's back up to the beginning of part B. And look at just the right hand in measures, let me smooth this, in measures 16 and 17. You'll notice that 16 is the same as measure 1 for the right hand. So we already know this. This is E, A, B. But rather than going from C right down to A, we have a couple of more notes in there. I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong spot. We have one more note in there. So we go, the beginning of this phrase again is on E, A, B, and then we have C and D before we go back to A. So let's turn the metronome on, get this in the correct rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. I'm going to show you how this differs from what you did in part A. So part A went like this at the very beginning. It went 1, 2. Let me do that again. That was a little shaky. 1, 2. Part B will start this way. 1, 2. Okay? So that is the very beginning of part B. We're going to wait to put the hands together for another moment. I'd like to add in the second time the right hand comes in. So you see we have that phrase we just did. Then we have 2 measures of rest, 2 measures where there's nothing that happens in the right hand. That's 18 and 19. Then in 20, we have another rhythm and new notes that are different than anything we've done before. Okay? So we have C, D, C again. And then we jump up to F, G, and E. Now what's the proper rhythm for this section? One, two. Again. 1, 2. Okay. Now, I would like to put the left and right hand together for this. I saw one little part that's slightly different than what we did in part A. So let's point that out, because then I'd like to do measures 16 through 23, both hands together twice. But before we do that, we will see that in measure 20, the left hand is slightly different. Okay. Now you are welcome to do exactly, play very precisely or on this, or you can keep the same pattern that we've been doing. It looks like I decided to do very exact. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I move away from that just for consistency's sake, and I play it a little bit differently every time I play it. But measure 19 is the same pattern we've been doing on A. Sorry. Okay. Now you're welcome to play that same pattern for 20 as well. Or, looking at the sheet music and being very precise about that, the way that this rhythm will go in 20 as it's written. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and okay. So let's keep this metronome on, and I will play the left hand as is written in the sheet music, just again for clarity's sake. Let's do both hands together from 16, measure 16 to 23. We got to move this forefinger, that ring finger, off of the E to make sure that that right hand can come in. So just take a note of that. You'll need to move that off. It may be there just out of habit, so you may have to make a conscious effort to do that. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. We'll stop there. Do that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Stop there. Okay, if you'd like to bump that metronome up a little bit, we'll do that later, but you're welcome to do that now as well. It's going quite slow, but it helps really get the rhythms and the notes nice and in order, very precise, and then makes it much easier to speed it up later. Okay, so let's finish off part B. Yes. Okay, part B, the second part is almost exactly the same, so we actually don't really need to do this very much. If we are comparing, for example, measures 9 through 12, you will notice that 9 through 12 compared to 24 through 27 are exactly the same. So we don't even need to do that, all right? What I will do instead is I'm going to focus on the last two measures that are slightly different. This adds, sometimes I do this as a nice little, you have it something similar and then you add just one or two notes that's slightly different, and it's just it's nice for the ear. It's like just a little dabble of something slightly different in something that's already familiar, and that's very interesting. That combination of familiarity and newness is in a certain sense part of the magic of music, and as a listener receiving it and finding it very beautiful, because you can play with it. You can your mind sort of enters in and you feel comfortable in it, and yet you're also surprised at the same time. So this is an example of the surprise in the familiar. So 29 and 30. I already looked at the left hand. Let's look at the right hand, and then we'll just put them straight together because there's only 3 notes, and I think it'll make more sense. So with that right hand, we'll have the left hand on A, okay? But the right hand, after we've played A here, we will go to G, up to B, and down to A. So we kind of just circle this A. Like to do that a lot. I think it's very nice. Okay, so let's do 29 and 30. You know what? Let's do 28, 29, and 30. That will help us lead from one part to the next. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. Again, this is 28, 29, and 30. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now let's bump this up to 110. Excuse me. 110. Bump that up to 110. Let's do the whole section twice. All right. Again, a lot of familiarity, but some variation as well. So that's why we'll do it twice. And then we'll do part C, and then we'll finish up this video with part C. Okay, so this is measures 16 through 30, all of part B. One, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay. I probably wouldn't go any faster than that. Just personal preference. Remember to also turn off the metronome as you're playing, because we don't really play like metronomes. And so even as I'm playing, I feel a little shaky on it, to be honest with you, because I'm not used to thinking about playing exactly with the metronome. So some of it's not quite as precise as I'd like it to be, but there's also an important freedom to turning it off and letting it be expressive, which means that there's going to be some slight variation in the tempo, in the way that you are using the tempo to express as well. But I think it's very important as you're practicing to practice first with the metronome as you're learning a piece, especially if you're not familiar with the rhythms, and it will help it be very precise and make sure that left hand and right hand really click together so that you're very comfortable with that. You know how it's supposed to sound, and then you can add and really put into it some very nice expression, working with the tempo in an appropriate way, not too much, not too little. But anyways, metronome on, off, fast, slow, all that's important in its own place. So that's part B. Come back when you are ready for part C. As always, I would encourage you at this point, if you've got part B done, work on combining that with part A, okay? Make sure you can go between these parts very well. I'm not going to do that here because it just is a little bit lengthy, and that's something that you already have the materials now to be able to do that on your own as well. So put all of that together, A and B, practice going through all of that, and then we'll move to part C, which has will be up in the higher range and have something a little bit different going on there. So come back when you're ready for that. Okay, we're back for part C. I'd like to, again, cut this basically in half. We're going to focus on measures 31 through 38 for the first part, and then we'll finish it off from 38 through 50. All right. if you kind of just take a general glance at it, you'll see that the right hand is, as we've seen in other parts of the piece, very slim. There's really only a few notes in this. This song really, is meant to kind of ring out in a certain way. Like I mentioned before, the left hand is kind of the stability piece of it, and the right hand just sort of like ringing bells. It just it pierces through and echoes out as well. But that's kind of the feel of it, and a touch of compassion comes from this idea of a gentle but also a very very powerful touch. And so that's kind of how I think of the right hand in a lot of ways with this piece. So just as some visuals to help you understand the feel of the piece in a different kind of way. Okay, so the left hand, if you take a look at this, you'll see that we've got, oh my goodness, just about the same thing that we've already had before. There are a few spots of slight variation, and I'll point those out along the way. But what I'd like to do right now is actually just focus on the right hand, because we see, for example, in measures 32, 33, and 34, the right hand is exactly the same as we've had in that A position with the same rhythm. Okay, so that's the left hand. We don't need to mess with that. Let's look at what the right hand does these first 2 times it enters in. So we have the right hand kind of guides us into part C. The ear will notice, oh, okay, we're entering into a different range. And the way that it does this is it goes from A to A. Okay? It's got some notes in between, but that's the beginning note and the end note of the first phrase. So whereas we've been messing around, right here, and we did a little bit up here, we're going to go all the way up and really reach, for your 16-string lyre in particular, we're going to go all the way up to that highest range, and have the ear listen to something a little bit different, though with the same chord progressions as we've had before. So these notes in measure 31 and 32, we have A, E, G. That G leads into A again. Okay. Once we have that, we have 2 measures of rest, and then we have the right hand coming in again. For the 19th string, we have A, and then we go up to B, A, G, E. For the 16th string, everything is the same, except instead of going up to the B, which you don't have, you'll go down to G. So you will do A, G, A, G, E, rather than A, B, A, G, E. You'll do A, G, A, G, E. Still very nice. But for the 16, we'll go up. I'll do that one more time so there's no confusion. A, B, A, G, E. All right. When you hit this G in measure 36, that is when your left hand is going to switch down to G, which would make a lot of sense, because if we stayed on A and played G, they don't go together. But if we go to G, they're just 2 octaves apart. Okay? So that's when you'll bump that down. Before we do both hands together, let's take a look at the only spot where the rhythmic variation is different. I'm not going to do the rhythms with the right hand yet, because it will be way easier to do it with them together. Most of the times they don't even play together in this section anyways. So let's take a look. This is measure 35. We saw this in measure 20. It's the exact same notes. So rather than having, we have a small break, we have this instead. Let me go back to our 90. There we go. I'll do 34 and 35. One more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. But let's put both hands together. Let's see. Yeah, 38 is the only thing on that other page. So let's put 31 through 38 together, both hands with 90 on our metronome, nice and slow, so we've got everything, plenty of time to think about where we're going and put everything together. Here we go. Let me make sure I'm in the right spot. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, I'll do that one more time. My head nod was to say this is when you switch down to G. If I can remember to vocalize it, I will do that. But let's do this one more time. Both hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Here we go. Okay, we will pause from there. Pause there for now. And then let's finish off. Yeah, let's finish off section C. There we go. So section C, we've got from 39 until 50. So the right hand is going to come in 3 more times. Let's talk about that. And then we'll put it all together. Let's look at the left hand for just a moment. We can see that, again, we're just in this G position or A position. There are 3 spots where it's slightly different, and they're different. 2 of them are different in the exact same way that we already just talked about twice. And then the other is even more simple than that. So I'll do that in a moment. Let's focus on the right hand. And then we'll put them together and I'll articulate those small differences in the left hand. Okay, again, if you'd like to keep the left hand the same with that same pattern that we've been doing, that will probably work just as well. For me, and particularly for the acoustic build, it was a little bit too much. There were too many notes going on at once. I didn't really like that, and I didn't tend to naturally play it that way. That's why it got written this way. But with these sorts of things, I would encourage flexibility and whatever sounds good for your particular lyre, and what also is most comfortable and most natural for you. So you have all the freedom in the world to do that. So let's look at the right hand. We see that the first time it comes in is exactly the same as it did at the beginning of this section. So we again have A, E, G, A. Okay. And the next time, the second time it comes in, which is in measure 43, it's also extraordinarily similar to what we had before. The first part is exactly the same, and the second part of it is a little bit different. So what do we have? For the 19 string, then I'll do 16. 19, we have A, B, A, G. You already had that before, right? And then we're going to go back up to A and end on a B. So again, this is for 19. We have A, B, A, G, A, D. So we're only playing 3 notes, and they go up and down from each other. Okay. With the 16 string, you don't have that D. So what you're going to do instead is you'll play A, G. I'm sorry, you don't have that B. You'll go A, G, A, G, just like before. And then instead of playing A, B, you will play D twice. This is a kind of a leading off tone, both the B and the D. That's why those are the 2 notes that are present there. So again, for that 16, those of you who have 16 string, you've got A, G, A, G, D, D. And then the final time that the right hand comes in, this is different than what we've had before. This is measure 47. 47 in the right hand. For 19 string, we go up. For 16 string, we're going to go down because we're going to end on the A. And, yeah, okay. We're going to end on the A, but we want to build up to it or build up to it by going down, if that makes any sense. So let's do 19 string, and then we'll do 16. So 19 string, the last note that we played a few measures earlier was the B. And we'll go from the B to the C, to the B, and A. That's 19 string. For 16 string, what you're going to do is you've ended on a D, and you're going to play with that instead. So you'll have D, C, B, A. You'll just climb right on down. Okay. All right, so let's put these three entrances together with the left hand. As before. Okay, all right. So measure 39 with the left hand. This you could think of as the end of the last phrase. So in 38 you had, and then in 39 you're just sort of finishing that by going from G, A to B. So this is how those two measures will sound together, 38 and 39 left hand only. Again. Okay. Then in measure 40, that right there, the left hand will go up to the A again. We again have in 43 that same variation that we had before. And it's in the same spot. So all that's the same. All right. We have that same rhythmic variation, but rather than on the A, we have it on the G. The next time there's a difference, which is in measure 49. So 49 left hand is the same thing, but on G. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. And it plays in the same way in regards to the cooperation between the left hand and right hand. They play the same way in both of those measures. All right. So it's going to sound very similar, feel very similar. That's why it ended up being repeated that way. So let's do measures 39 through 50 on 90, and then we'll speed it up and do all of section C, and then call it a day for part 1 on Touch of Compassion. Once you have this, I'll talk it through in a minute, but you've learned the vast majority of the piece. So this is definitely the heaviest load in regards to learning the piece in relation to part 1, part 2, and part 3. So we're going to finish this off and then leave you to work it through at your own pace, your own timing. And but right now, let's do 90, metronome on 90, and measures 39 through 50. This is the second half of section C. Okay. I'm going to leave off the left hand on measure 39. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to start just with the right hand because that's the beginning of the next phrase in the music, and it's a little bit, doesn't make a lot of sense to start with the left hand here because that's the end of that other one. If you're having trouble transitioning, that might be different, but for the sake of clarity, let's just start with the right hand in measure 39. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, now let's turn this up to 110 again. And let's do all of section C. So we will begin measure 31. Let me pause this so you can hear me. Measure 31 all the way until, what is that number? 50. Okay. So we're going to start, we're going to do the whole thing. I'll do it twice for you at 110. So this is sort of up to speed. Again, I'd probably recommend doing 90 first, then 95, 100, 105, 110, that kind of thing to build up, so it's not such a huge jump. But for the sake of this video, we'll do it at 110. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, let's do that one more time. My finger caught on that A, so it didn't quite sound, but otherwise it was just fine. Just as a little note before I do this last run through of section C, once you finish C, what I'm going to do, I think, on this run through is I will show you how it leads into part A following this. So in measure 51 is the beginning of A repeated once again. Okay, so I'll just do the first little phrase for that, just so you can hear, oh, that's how that transitions into that. Okay, so C with just our toe dipped in part A. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And that's part A right there. Okay. All right, we're going to end it there for now. Of course, put A, B, and C all together. Again, makes a nice loop. I say this many times. The order of the piece is A, B, C, A. And then after that second time A is repeated, then you have the bridge. And then we return back to C. But basically, you could play A, B, C, A, A, B, C, A, A, B, C, A, sort of over and over again to help broaden out the comfort that you have with certain sections. It helps to smooth things out a little bit more. And because those are the transitions that you need to have anyways, from A to B and from C to A, it works nicely to just kind of go through those again and again and again. Remember to relax as you play this one. Your hands are going to get tired, your body's going to get tired, but try and relax as you play it. It's a relaxing song. It's, again, a very contemplative, meditative song. And so that sound will be communicated through your body and through the instrument if you yourself are also relaxed and are receiving the music in that way. So that's kind of the goal in regards to disposition, interior and exterior, in regards to playing this song. So anyways, I hope it's going very well for you, and I plan to have the second and then third parts of this song out in the coming weeks, hopefully one a week, something like that, and you can look forward to those coming out at that time. Alrighty, thank you so much. God bless, and the peace of Christ be with you.